Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
So, Sashi finally showed up. Where were you?
So I was not feeling well, so couldn't attend live classes.
Okay. So, have you watched all the recordings backups?
Sir, yesterday's recording is still pending. I'll watch it today.
Okay. And test?
Test professional ethics I have to give, sir.
So, when are you planning to give?
Maybe by today or tomorrow evening, I'll give test.
Okay. And I didn't receive that sheet that I told you that everyone has to write down their mistakes and forward it to me. I'll insist that again and again until I receive it. Okay. So, we welcome you back, Sashi. Two
Thank you, sir.
fingers clap. And let's start
Thank you,
now
sir.
with chapter 2, audit planning. This we had to do with essay 300 series actually, and similarly chapter 3 also we had to do with essay 315, and similarly chapter 2 you can link with more or less with essay 300. So I told you earlier also that whatever we have left will be covered in chapter 2. If you go through SM, that is study material of chapter 2, you will find that there are lot many topics, but as I told that we have already covered most of the topics in our standards. So whatever topics we are left with, that we will cover now in this chapter number 2, audit planning. So first of all, as I told, there will be a remaining there yeah, so the remaining topics will be covered. The only the remaining topics will be covered, so you won't be finding any sort of linkages within the chapter. We'll be just covering the topic by topic. Topic by topic will be covering, so that if at all a question comes out of any of the topic, we are able to score on that. So let's see, first topic is what benefits or advantages of planning, as we did in essay 300, right? Remember, audit planning was essay 300. Similarly, what are the benefits or advantages of planning in an audit of financial statement? So as we covered there also, that do you remember, planning is a continuous process. It's not a discrete phrase. It starts right after the end of the audit, right after it begins the audit, and concludes till the end of the audit. Planning. So there we also learned what, that before risk assessment procedure, before further audit procedure, and even before considering the risk in the internal control or the inherent risk, before considering those risks, that is before performing RAP, we have to consider few matters. That means what, we have to consider materiality, involvement of experts. Do you remember 320, 620, 420, sorry, 520, 320, 520, 620, 320, 520, 620, 320 was materiality, 520 was analytical procedure, 620 was involvement of experts. So after, just after that, we have to also study what benefits of planning or advantages of planning. So benefits, you can say that we can give attention to important areas. If we have planned accordingly, then definitely we can give attention to all those important areas. For example, if you have planned for your direct text that all these chapters are important, you will only come to know what all things are important once you plan. So you'll then tend to know that okay, PGBP, TDS, all this chapter, definitely a question comes, and even the question numbers are fixed. For which question this question will show up, from PGBP chapter or from TDS chapter, right? So all this planning you'll come across, then you'll definitely tend to give what attention to all the important areas. Similarly, timely resolution of potential problems. Once you give time to the problems, once you give time towards planning, definitely you will tend to realize that you have now the solutions towards the problem. Similarly, proper organization, proper management, proper selection of the engagement team if you plan accordingly, direction and supervision, and coordination in the work done by the auditors. If you can see these last 3 4 or 4 5 points, if you could see last 4 5 points, can you relate this back to something which you have studied? Can you relate this back to something which you have studied around 5 6 years back, or 5 to 6 years back? Can you relate this to something which you have already studied? Bolo bolo. Do you find these topics organization, selection, direction, supervision, coordination? Is this
In
Sir,
business
I think
studies,
huh?
in business studies class 12,
Right.
11 or 12.
So class 12 BST, BST business study, right? So you can just write BST important chapters. You'll tend to realize all the benefits of planning. BST के important chapters. So organization, management, selection, direction and supervision and coordination. All these are what? Your benefits of planning. You'll be able to better organize yourself, properly plan accordingly, properly select in your engagement team the required number of members with the requisite skills and experience. Direction and supervision, it will help you in directing the engagement team and supervising the engagement team. And lastly, the coordination. So BST important chapters, all the important chapters of the BST, or all the chapters you can say. Now comes to nature and extent of planning. So how much plan you should do, how much planning you should do, the extent, the nature and extent. Remember, nature and extent. So far as the nature of planning is concerned, it would vary according to, quickly you can tell me, if the size of the entity is large, whether the planning will increase or decrease. Size of the entity or complexity of the entity is very complex, or suppose entity is involved in crypto transaction, what do you think, the planning will increase or decrease?
Increase, sir.
Increase, right? Similarly, if you already have past experience and expertise, if you already have past experience and expertise, then whether your planning will increase as compared to if you don't have the past experience and expertise.
Yes, sir, it would increase.
Similarly, changes in the circumstances, if at all there are certain circumstances which is changing according to the situation which is happening, then that is also has to be considered. So nature of planning, as far as this goes, the nature of planning will be depending upon what? Size and complexity of the entity, past experience and expertise, and the changes in the circumstances. Past experience in the entity, changes in the circumstances, and complexity of the entity. So you can see PSC, if you can see PSC, past experience, S for size, and C for circumstances change. Now overall audit strategy, do you remember this? We have already studied in essay 300 and even in essay 299. Overall audit strategy, overall audit strategy, factors that the auditor will need to consider while determining overall audit strategy. Anyone? This is either third or fourth time I am asking the question. Factors affecting the overall audit strategy, factors determining the overall audit strategy. Hmm? Yes. Not able to recollect or what?
And
This we have done as an answer, factors determining overall audit strategy.
achieve.
Reporting objectives. Anyone ringing bells with reporting objectives? Right. Results of PE activity. Correct, Pooja. Results of preliminary engagement activities. So you failed, and therefore with now all the resources that you have, with all the necessary resources plus with significant team efforts, you will tend to realize or convert CRO into engagement partner. So CRO, C for characteristics of the engagement, RO reporting objective of the engagement, preliminary engagement results, what were the results of the preliminary engagement activities that you conducted, and whether the experience of the engagement partner, already past experience of the engagement partner, could be relevant, could be benefited, right? Then with the, what is the driving factor within the team, and significant engagement team driving factor, and nature, timing and extent of resources necessary to perform, NTE of resources necessary to perform. Similarly, audit plan, we'll have to see it's the responsibility of the auditor determining the overall audit strategy, determining the audit plan. It is the responsibility of the auditor, and the auditor will decide upon the planned audit procedure with the work of the entity's personnel. That means with the work of the entity's employees or personnel, they will work out what, how, or how exactly are they going to perform the audit. Important is that there should be no compromise in the effectiveness of the audit. Example, you can discuss the NTE of detailed audit procedure with the management. However, you should not give them the hint that okay, they are now aware about each and every action that you are going to take. So they should not preempt your activities. Although you can discuss with the management how you are actually going to perform the audit, how are you planning, what are you thinking, but they should not be given the judgment that okay, they are aware about each and everything that you are going to perform. So they should not be able to preempt with management, and that may compromise the effectiveness of the audit by making the audit procedures too predictable, right? So it should not happen that management can easily predict what your course of action is going to be. You can obviously discuss with the management, but do not tell them in detail audit procedures, what are you going to perform, cash surprise check. If you are going to perform, then do not tell them that we are going to perform cash surprise check someday. So definitely they will be ready, right? Similarly, if you are going to perform revenue audit, on what date you should not tell, even though you can tell what, how are you going to perform, with what sequence, or whatever be your planning with the discussion with the management. But it should not be too predictable. It should not lead to predictiveness in the management. Then changes in planning decision, this we have already done. Do you remember changes in the planning decision? So if you have changes in RAP, if you have changes in FAP, if you have changes in other audit procedure, you should document the same. Remember that we have done in SA 300. Similarly, here you should update and change what, overall audit strategy and audit plan as necessary during the course of audit, and may need to modify the overall audit strategy. Do you remember there also we saw SA 300? If you are modifying the audit plan, or if you are modifying the audit strategy, you might be required to modify the audit plan. And once you required to be modify the audit plan, you might also have been required to modify your RAP audit, modify your FAP, modify your other audit procedures. So that is what they are saying, results of unexpected, because of result of unexpected event, or because there are certain changes in the condition, or because the audit evidence obtained from the results of the audit procedures. So that is how you will tend to then change your planning decision. This all we have done, this all we have done in SA 300. If you can link this to SA 300. Now, important benefits of overall audit strategy. So remember to differentiate. Why are we paying so much attention to each and everything? Just I told you the line above the answer is very, very important. So here, benefits of planning already we saw. Benefits of planning, what are the benefits of planning, Nupur? Benefits of planning.
Organizing, selection, direction, and supervision, easy coordination, attention to important areas.
Right. Similarly, benefits of overall audit strategy. Now strategy is more wider, or suppose strategy is wider or planning is wider. I told you this earlier as well in SA 300. Strategy or planning, which is more wider in scope?
Strategy.
Strategy, right? Strategy, then we divide strategy into different milestone, and we plan accordingly to achieve each and every milestone. So similarly, how do you determine what are the benefits of overall strategy? So suppose when I have strategized how are we going to perform the audit, so I've determined that okay, fine, instead of Sagar I'll be sending Nupur. Instead of Sagar I'll be sending Nupur as a engagement team. In the engagement team, instead of Sagar, I have decided that I'll send the Nupur. So I have decided that to employ qualitative resources. Qualitative resources. So Sagar is already happy. He always wanted not to go to audit, and he even was underperforming. So qualitative resources, you can employ the qualitative resources, the kind of resources which is necessary in the circumstances, or the kind of resources which you think will do the work exactly. that you require. So when you strategize, then you can accordingly decide the resources which you can employ. And once you have decided upon the resources, you can deal with what quality of resource you need to employ. Quality of resources. Similarly, quantity wise also I can decide that okay, fine, along with Nupur, Sagar can also go. Along with Nupur, Sagar can also go. It will ultimately lead to faster completion of the work. So quantity wise also you can decide. So employment of the qualitative resources, allocation of the quantity of resources, when to allocate which employee to what work. So when once you strategize, these are all the benefits. And then the timing of deployment of resources. So we know that certain audits, there are very less time involved, so allowed less time allowed to complete the audit. So in that case, are you completing the audit, or are you employing a lot many professional or lot many resources during the completion phase or during the interim phase? You have to decide at what timing of at which timing phase of the audit you are gonna employ your resources, which timing, interim stage or final stage of the audit, interim or final stage. And lastly, what management of resources, that means you are now better able to manage your resources, determine what nature, timing and extent of resources are necessary able to perform the audit, and accordingly deploy those resources, manage those resources. Like I told, I was sending Nupur, then again I was sending Sagar. Now in case sometimes Nupur is not available, then I can of course do the or I can make Sagar responsible for certain works. So that is how you manage the resources. Go through each and every point. Read this point. This has come for 4 marks one time in exam. So this is important. Benefits of overall audit strategy. Done or not. Qualitative wise, you can think of, quantity wise, then timing wise, and lastly managing all the things. Management of the resources. So employment of the qualitative resources, employment of the quantity of resources, timing, whether at interim stage or whether at final completion stage of the audit, and lastly management of resources. Management. Everyone, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So considerations now in establishing overall audit strategy. Just now we saw what all factors that will help you determine the overall audit strategy, what all factor, characteristics of the engagement, reporting objective of the engagement, timing of the engagement, right? So under each and every point now we will have to see. This I gave you as an homework for essay 300. This I have given you as an homework. As homework I have given these topics to you. Characteristics of the engagement, reporting objectives and timing on nature of the communication, significant factors, preliminary engagement activity, knowledge gained on other engagements by the engagement partner. By engagement partner, has he gained any other knowledge during the previous audits, और preliminary engagement activity का क्या result आया. Significant factors, each point was discussed in detail in essay 300. Do you remember? I have given this as an homework. I think you all have done it. Yes or no? Shall I ask? Done the homework or shall we do? Bolo bolo.
So we will do it by ourselves.
We will do. Why haven't you done till now? Let's do. Characteristics of the engagement. So in the characteristics as well, you'll tend to realize that all these things has to be considered while you are determining the characteristics of the engagement. For each and every point, they are now discussing in detail. So see, these are not important points if as far as the examination point of view, if you consider, these are not that much important, but since these are given in study mat, they can ask you. So you should know that okay, if they ask me on the characteristics of the engagement, specifically on the characteristics of the engagement, then I will have to write all these points, at least 5 or 6 out of these points. So FRF you will consider. That means what you will determine the characteristics of the engagement based on what is the financial reporting framework. So suppose the schedule 3 is applicable, so you can determine that it is okay statutory audit, financial reporting framework, AS, Ind AS. Then you can determine the characteristics of the engagement. Similarly, industry specific any reporting requirement is there. For example, RBI requires you to report on LFR, long form audit report. You must be aware about this when you have gone to bank audits. So long form audit report has to be submitted, has to be reported, right? It is mandatory requirement. Any regulatory requirement, any industry specific requirement, so this is a banking industry specific requirement, reporting requirement, such as reports mandated by the industry regulators. So just remember what regulators, regulatory requirement or reporting, regulatory reporting requirement. Similarly, expected audit coverage. So all this decide what your characteristics. So how much are you gonna cover in the audit? What is the expectation from you that you will cover asset, liability, income, expenditure, equity? What all things are you gonna cover in your audit? Expected audit coverage. Then similarly, what is the relationship between the parent and its entity? So the nature of the relationship will help you determine how much level of consolidation has to be done. So the parent is suppose holding 45% shareholding, however is controlling the board of director, however is controlling the board of director. So don't you think the B limited is a subsidiary of P limited? In effect, in essence, B limited is a subsidiary of P limited, right? Yes or no? So in that case, they will have to consolidate B limited in their financials. P limited will have to consolidate B limited in their financials, and that means what, my scope will increase as an auditor. If I am being appointed as a auditor of P limited, then I will also have to go through what B limited financials, because that is being consolidated in my financials. If I am being appointed as a consolidated financial statements auditor, I am being appointed as what, financial statement which is consolidated financial statement, and the auditor of CFS. So there I will also have to look at B limited also. If I'll have to see what is the relationship between the parent and its subsidiary, or parent and its component, that will determine how the group is to be consolidated. So P for parent, and the extent to which the components are audited by the auditors. So how much detail are you going to each and every subsidiary, each and every associates? Till what extent? To what depth are you gonna consider each and every component? Then entities use of service organization, this you will come across just right now. For right now, type 1 and type 2, just write down this will go through day after tomorrow, SA 402 and SA 450, SA 402 and SA 450. There will come across SA 402, audit consideration in the case of service organization. So there we'll study that we generally ask for type 1 and type 2 report from the service auditor. So you can understand the characteristics of the engagement if you come across the type 1 report or type 2 report also. So by understanding the type 1 report, you will tend to know that okay, only the controls are mentioned, but are they operating effectively or not, that is mentioned in type 2 report. So based on that, you can determine the characteristics of the engagement. Are you gonna also have to perform the audit with respect to control effectiveness of the audit, whether the internal controls are effective or not? Are you also gonna perform or check that? So that overall characteristics of the engagement will depend on all these factors: FRF, industry specific regulatory requirement, then your components or audit coverage, and then coverage wise you can see what the relationship which you have with your components. That will help you to determine how much level of consolidation has to be done. Similarly, extent to which the components are audited, how much in depth are we gonna cover the components of the audit entity. And the service organization entities use of SO means service organizations. Then how much evidence you have obtained in the previous audits, expected use of those audit evidence. So that will also determine the characteristics of the audit evidence or characteristics of the engagement. For example, audit evidence related to risk assessment procedure and test of controls. Evidence, E for evidence. Then IT, how much is the IT involvement in the entity? If IT involvement is a lot in the entity, then you will also have to consider what, automated controls, testing of automated controls separately. Automated controls. So information technology, how much involvement is there? And the availability of the client personnel and data. How much is it available? The integrity of the client, the reputation of the client. Do they provide us with the access of all the information, additional information, unrestricted access, all information, additional information, unrestricted access, all this determines what my characteristics of the engagement. So you can just learn this all points by this. Remember that we want FRF, but this FRF should be a lot of space should be there in the FRF. Lot of space should be there. That means what we want spacier FRF. It should not be a bit hodgepodge like Schedule 3. It should be what? A spacier FRF. Lot of space. So again, you can see what all the points that are there. S. So from S you can see what? Service organization. From S, service organization. P for parent. P for parent. Fourth point. A for availability of data. Then C for coverage. I for information technology. E for evidence. And then R for regulatory reporting requirement, industry specific reporting requirement like LFAR. I gave you example of LFAR, which is banking industry specific reporting requirement, and FRF is FRF. So I hope all the points are covered. Yes. Are you getting it or not? The question what they can ask is specific to characteristics of the engagement. Then what all factors you will consider, what all things has to be considered by an auditor. From the first point of that overall audit strategy. Now come to the second point of overall audit strategy, reporting objectives, timing of the audit, nature of communication. So it is pretty much, you can think of all the points pretty much from the heading itself. So reporting objective, you will see from the reporting, just divide WIP, that is work in progress or completed reports. Similarly from communication, you can divide what? Communication amongst engagement team members and amongst whom? Communication amongst third parties, including any statutory contractual reporting responsibilities arising from the audit. Clear? 4 points are, we are done with 4 points. See here, the discussion with the management regarding communication on the status of audit work, WIP, and discussion with the management regarding type and timing of the reports to be issued. That means what? Completed report. If you have done with your reporting, then you have to discuss with the management regarding type of the report that is to be issued and the timing of the report that has to be issued. Timing of the report. So once again, if you can see the 4 points from reporting, you can see what? Whether the work is still now in progress, then you have to discuss with the management, because it, suppose after every 15 days you will discuss with the management that this much work has been completed, then again in next 15 days you will tell the management that okay, this much audit is being done. So discussion with the management with respect to completed work, report, timing of the report, and also the discussion with the management with respect to the status of the work, status WIP. Similarly, communication amongst engagement team members and communication amongst third parties, and timing of the audit. So timing also you have to consider what is the timing of and reporting requirement, what is the due date, is there any statutory requirement that you need to consider for completion of the audit, that the audit should be completed by this much date, this much timeline. So all the points you can get from the heading itself. Heading is what? Reporting objectives, timing of the audit, and communication. So here also you can join one more point, communication. We have 3 points. So one you can communicate with the engagement team, other you can communicate amongst third parties, and one communicate with what? Yes, anyone? Communication with? Bolo, communication with
Previous auditor.
previous auditor, no, but other auditors.
Auditors of components.
Yeah, auditors of components. That means with other auditors in accordance with, say, SA 600. Component auditor or branch auditor, you can say.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, in previous topic, we discussed characteristics of the engagement.
Mhm.
सर सर इसमें हमने एफ आर एफ पॉइंट को लिया, ये इससे कैसे कनेक्ट हुआ? ये जो एंगेजमेंट है तो ये हमारा ऑडिट एंगेजमेंट होगा.
So suppose now financial reporting framework, this could be example. Reporting framework is, suppose they have given you schedule 3 according to companies act. So you can think that okay, characteristics of the engagement will be more or less in and around companies act. I have to follow AS Ind AS, which is specified under companies act under section 133. Similarly, if suppose you are doing the audit in accordance with banks, then there is schedule 3 of RBI, or schedule 3 of banking regulation act. It is not schedule 3 of companies act, it is schedule 3 of banking regulation act. Similarly, if you are doing audit in accordance with say what, Ind AS, and Ind AS, in that also part C, that is they are divided into three parts now. So part 1, part 2, and part 3. Part 3 specifically deals with NBFCs. So NBFCs, you will then have to determine that okay, we have to perform audit in accordance with Ind AS. So that is how you determine that what all provisions, what is the actually the characteristics of the audit, what all statutory requirements you have to go through for the audit. So based
Got
on
it, sir.
FRF, you will have to decide, or you can say vice versa, that characteristics will also help you determine the FRF. What is the characteristics of the engagement? So you'll have to then go through what is the FRF requirement, what should be my financial reporting framework according to the characteristics that I have been given for the audit to complete the audit.
Okay, sir.
Now last C point, significant factors, preliminary engagement activity results and knowledge gained on other engagements by the engagement partner. Can we get benefit out of this knowledge that he has from the past audit? So here they want you to determine the materiality in accordance with SA 320, because we want to consider what all significant factors has to be considered. So for us to determine the significance directly relates to what? Materiality. So whatever is materiality would be also a significant factor for you. And similarly, preliminary identification of areas where there may be a higher ROMM, risk of material misstatement. So once you are decided with materiality, then you can also determine what are the risk of misstatements which are material to the entity. So ROMM. Then impact of this ROMM, impact of this assessed ROMM that you assessed. These are all my ROMM. So what can be the impact at the overall FS level or at the assertion level? Similarly, then you will also have to exercise professional skepticism. You'll have to exercise what? Professional skepticism. What is the result? What are the results of preliminary engagement activities? So this you can relate to what? Knowledge gained on other engagements by the engagement partner on previous audits or similar audits like this. So results of the previous audits, including identified deficiencies that I as an engagement partner are now aware about. I am aware about what all generally, if suppose I have done all the industry audits or similar to this industry, I have done the iron and steel audits, steel industry audits. So I am already aware about what all points has to be considered or what all points have to be covered. Similarly, discussion of matters that may affect the audit and firm personnel responsible for performing other services to the entity. So then you have to discuss with other personnel within the entity so that you can determine what all knowledge you can transfer amongst yourself, kind of like that. And then management's commitment to design, volume of transactions, importance attached to internal controls. So all this relates to what? Significance, significant factors or significance. So volume of transaction, importance attached to internal controls, significant business development affecting the entity, significant industry specific developments, significant changes in the FRF. So whatever changes, whatever developments, whatever significant factors you can think of, you can just try to just think and try to tally whether these are given or not. So next time when you revise, just try to see whether all the significant factors with respect to materiality, with respect to um, changes in certain FRF, changes in certain circumstances. So these all points you can just mention. Just try to recall at least 5 to 6 points out of all these points. That is more than enough. Do not pay much time or attention on these points that you have to learn or mug up in detail all the points. Materiality, preliminary. So 3 points can be done right from this only, from the heading. Significant factors. You can just think of so many points from here only. Materiality. Then significant changes. And then volume of transaction. How much it is. Volume of transaction. Importance attached to internal control. Importance to internal controls. Similarly, preliminary engagement activities, what all the results of the preliminary engagement activities, and knowledge gained by the previous auditors on the previous audits, knowledge gained by the engagement partner in previous audits. So more or less 5.56 points you can quickly recall. So do I need to also go through other homeworks which I have given? Have you done all the other homeworks or not? Questions, are you going through? How much time are you giving to the subject after the class? If you are not revising, if you are not going through the homework, or if you are not going through the questions along with the standard, all this will go in vain. Yes, how much time are you going? How much time are you giving after the class? So 1 to 1.5 hours, are you able to revise the entire class?
सर समटाइम्स कभी कभी छूट जाता है थोड़ा ज्यादा होता है तो
And questions, what about questions? What about homeworks that I give? Only hardly I give a topic or two. It's not like a significant homework, like for even if for 5 minutes if you give, that will be suffice. Questions you have to give for each standard, you can give 10 to 15 minutes. That's it. Not able to revise Saturday Sunday class. Why? Enjoying the weekend, Dhanlakshmi. What were you doing on Sunday? अच्छा, हैंगओवर हो रहा है. ऑडिट का ही हैंगओवर हो रहा है ना. और पार्टी. Then I'll stop giving the homework now, because if you're not doing, then what's the point of leaving the topics? I'm leaving at your trust that okay fine, you will be doing it. Else you will only then later on say that okay, this was not done in the class, this was left. Development of overall plan. So this is a test your knowledge SM question, TYK question, test your knowledge question. Do you know in the SM study mat there are certain questions given at the end of the chapter, test your knowledge question. So again, this can be asked in your question or your exam. So pay attention. This pertains to what? Overall audit plan. If they ask you overall audit strategy, you know what to write, right? CRO से engagement partner बन गया. Preliminary engagement activity results, previous audit, just know what all points we covered. But if they ask you development of overall audit plan, so here you will have to consider what points? Terms of the engagement, that means what? So first of all, you will see what? SA 210, agreeing the terms of audit, engagement, SA 210. Then similarly, statutory responsibilities and statutory requirements. So what all statutory responsibilities is imposed on you and what all statutory requirement is imposed on you, that you will have to then accordingly plan. So terms of engagement, statutory responsibility, statutory requirements, statutory responsibility and statutory requirements. Then what all accounting policies adopted by the clients and what are changes are there. So you'll have to then decide and determine whether these changes were for proper and just reason, that is proper justification you have to obtain from the client for the purpose of changes in the accounting policies, changes in accounting policies. Then effects of new accounting and auditing pronouncement on the audit, what all effects are there. For example, before 2018 it was what? India 17. Before 2018 it was India 17 on leases. Now they have removed India 17 and come out with India's 116. For leases they have come out with India's 116. Similarly, before India's 115 revenue recognition, revenue from operations, before that there were so many India's on other specific contracts. So contracts there was India's. Similarly, insurance contracts, other revenues, or similar to like normal business, there was separate India's. So they have all clubbed and combined and come out with India's 115. So there are certain new accounting or auditing pronouncements on the audit. So what is the effect on that? So what will be the effect? And identification of significant audit areas. So significant audit areas, do you remember? Audit areas, areas which require special audit consideration, areas which require special audit considerations. Yes, Dhan Lakshmi. Are areas which require special audit considerations or significant audit risk that require special audit consideration. Risk. SA 315. Risk of fraud. Yes, Pooja, correct. Then Lakshmi, are you able to recollect or not? Risk of fraud. Then बोलो जल्दी. So do anyone else remember or not except Pooja? Anyone else remembering or not, recollecting or not?
Transactions.
Unusual RPT. It is very unusual that related party knows CDEF but not ABCD, right? Kapil was saying. So unusual say unusual relation, unusual transactions. RPT say related party transaction. Then from C we have what?
It's a
Complexity of
complex
the
transaction.
transaction. That means what? There in those transactions the risk is specific or significant risk that requires special audit consideration. Similarly, D say degree of subjectivity involved in certain specific transactions, specifically in account estimate balances, transaction involving subjectivity. E for economic development, accounting development, any new sort of development that has arise. And F for risk of fraud risk. So identification of significant audit areas, setting of materiality levels for the audit purpose. So significant audit areas, you can relate this to materiality. So what is significant? Significant is all materiality. Materiality levels you have to determine as per SA 320. You have to determine performance materiality, total materiality. Then conditions requiring special attention such as the possibility of material error or fraud. Now special attention, just now what we did, special risk requiring special considerations, risk that requires special considerations. Then if all these are considered, then you know that okay, how much degree of reliance you can place on the accounting system and internal controls, how much degree of reliance you can then place upon all these transactions accounting policies. And specifically if you have decided that these all areas I have to pay specific attention to these all areas, then in the next audit you can decide upon other areas which you should pay special attention to. So there should be rotation on specified audit areas, specific audit areas. If suppose you are paying attention to revenue, and under the revenue you are paying attention to other income, then you can also pay in next time you can pay other expense or other miscellaneous expense. So suppose if you are paying attention to specific audit areas in one particular audit, there should be a rotation in specific audit areas, special attention in audit areas, rotation, nature of audit evidence that you will have to obtain. And then lastly, it is very simple, work of internal auditor, that is SA 610, work of other auditor, that is SA 600, involvement of expert, that is SA 620. That means overall SA 600 की series. So 600, 610, 620, 600, 610 and 620. Involvement of expert, involvement of internal auditor, involvement of other auditor. This will help you determine what? Determine the development of the audit plan. How are you performing? How are you going to perform the audit? How are you going to plan the audit? So again, let's just quickly revise. First, terms of the engagement. We'll have to see what terms of the engagement SA 210. Then statutory responsibility and statutory requirements. What all statutory responsibilities are imposed on you and what all statutory requirements. Then what? Then here significant audit areas. What all audit areas are important? You can say important audit areas. So from this point, important audit areas, you will tend to get what point? Materiality. You'll have to determine the materiality level. After materiality level, then you will come to know which special areas that you need to give special attention wale areas. And through this you will tend to have your degree of reliance on accounting policies, accounting frameworks, accounting estimates. And then you should also then rotate upon specified audit areas. If you are paying special attention to certain specified audit areas, in the next audit you should rotate that audit area, right? And lastly, what? 600, 610, 620, 600, 610, 620, 600, 610 and 620. So see the question. Test your knowledge question. Factors to be considered while development of overall audit plan. If they would have given factors affecting or determining overall audit strategy, then you will go through what? Characteristics of the engagement, reporting objectives, timing of reporting, preliminary engagement results, engagement partner experience with the previous audit engagements, similar audit engagements, can we get benefit, NTE of resources necessary to perform. And what do you think should be the answer for factors affecting development of audit plan in the case of joint audit? Do you remember? Development of audit plan in the case of joint audit. Planning in the case of joint audit, SA 299. Yes. Which points were there? Yes.
Sir, division of work.
Common area of work. Then what?
Preliminary engagement activity.
They are same only, na? What we done in overall audit strategy, I told you. In SA 299, while we were studying, we went through SA 300 first. Then we came back again
Yes.
SA 299. Why we did that?
Right.
Because the points are same. Overall audit strategy equals to what? audit plan in the case of joint audit, for you just to, for the purpose of examination, just try to differentiate between all this. What's the point if they give you the factors affecting development of audit plan in the case of joint audit and you write this? No point is matching from what we have done in overall audit strategy. No point will match. You'll get 0, 0, 0. Concepts are okay, but you have to then also go through the what answer has to be written for what question. That is more important examination wise. And this has specifically told us also. SA 299, in the case of joint audit, it is what planning they have given. They have given what development of audit plan, and whatever they have mentioned in wordings, they will, as it is right in the question paper also. And similarly, when they give you what development of overall strategy, what factors that will determine the overall audit strategy, same point. CRO से engagement partner वाला पूरा पूरा same है, ठीक है? Pay attention when I link this, and then when I again ask, you are blank. Pay attention. If you want time, write down, write here also and write there also. ऐसे 299 में भी लिखो, ऐसे 300 में भी लिखो, and here chapter 2 also you should write. Everywhere it should be written, so that whenever you are revising one or the other topic, you tend to recall what all same points are in other question. This has to be done multiple times in the audit, then only you will tend to retain. Give time now and write. Right now you should write in just all the topics, or in essay 299 also write down just beside essay 300 and write down here also. Yes, have you mentioned in all the three topics? Once you start jotting all these points, write down, writing, then only it will come. Now come to next topic, audit program. Formulating an audit program. So you are already aware about the framework of an audit program, I guess, right? Everyone, audit program. So first we will mention the areas that are to be audited: revenue, expense, or specific area. Then just beside that, due date, actual date of completion, the person who has done this area, who has reviewed this area, and then his signature, who's reporting manager. Everything has been mentioned in what? Audit program. Audit program, right? So you have to formulate an audit program. What all important matters needs to be considered in this regard? So what they can ask is important matters which you need to consider while formulating an audit program. So clearly spelling out audit objectives for each area is important. You have to spell out what exactly is your objective. So if you are doing the area, or if you are doing the audit of revenues, so what is your actual objective? Do you want to find out revenue leakages, or do you want to see what all is factors are contributing to the revenue, and then accordingly do the audit for major factors? So clearly the objectives to be done to link up the procedure with audit objectives. So then only you will able to determine the audit procedures with respect to particular objectives that you want to achieve through the audit of that specific area. So important matters on which need to be considered in this regard are nature of business in which the organization is engaged. First of all, the nature of the entity, nature of business, business model, nature of business. Then what is your overall plan? So you will draw your total plan. So the due date for revenue will be this, due date for expenditure will be this, due date for liability, due date for assets. Everything will be planned. Overall plan you will determine and approach accordingly. And then system of internal control and accounting procedure. Just note this one thing, that whenever they ask you about planning, definitely there will be a point with respect to internal controls. Internal controls. So you will have to decide upon the system of internal controls, and then also the accounting procedures. How is the accounting being done? Then size of the organization and structure of its management. How big is the entity? What is the structure, hierarchy structure? Who is the manager? So what is the structure, hierarchy structure, organization size, All these points you will have to see to draw up the audit program. Information as regards the organization of the business, and then lastly accounting policies. Okay, how are we gonna retain these points? Hmm? Think everyone.
Every topic.
Yeah, topic wise we are covering, that is why na, else we could have lived chapter 2 at all. Overall chapter 2 you can leave if we want to do only important topics. The point is you don't know which topic will be asked. So see chapter 2, they ask this topic which is very basic. If you could see, all the 4 points are very sort of say inclusive. Inclusive in the sense you could write on your own, but once you write these 4 points you will get definitely 4 marks. If any point is not mentioned here, you will not get any mark. If any point you have mentioned is not from here, you will not get point, you will not get marks. And if you see, these are very simple points. Below circumstances where the audit program will be suitably altered, would need to be suitably altered. That means what all points or what all circumstances where you will when you will have to what, when you will have to alter the audit program. Changes in audit program has to be altered, suitably altered. So these are very simple basic circumstances where we volume of turnover as expected is different, actual versus expectation, volume of turnover. Similarly, amount of book debtors versus actual debtors versus expected. Similarly, internal control procedure, you discovered that these are not that much effective as you thought it would be. That means test of controls, when you performed, you thought that controls are effective, but later on ultimately you found out that no, controls are not effective. And any fraud happened, any misappropriation of asset, you found out certain fraud, certain misappropriation of asset, certain fraudulent financial reporting. So these are very sort of basic inclusive point. You can also think of other points where audit program would need to be suitably altered, but they asked this for 4 marks in November 2022 only, last to last attempt. Question number 6C, you can go through 6C, that is 4 mark question they ask. C means what? 4 mark question. And the question you can see again the point which I always emphasize, everything they will give, the Mahabharata, Ramayana, everything they will give, and lastly what will they ask? Discuss the circumstance where the audit program would have to be suitably altered. That means what? Again, the line just above the answer, very important. So this, if you would have left, okay, this is very basic, then yeah, definitely you might not be able to recall. But if you are aware about this, then what is the harm? What is the harm in just aware about points? You could at least write the headings and then come out with certain points of your own inside the headings. The point here is not that it is hard or it is something a rocket science. The point here is that you should be aware about it and you need to just revise. That is everything that you need to score in audit, or even in chartered accountancy entire examination. Anything you won't find it is a rocket science. You just have to be aware about this, so that if at all comes, you should be aware. If you start leaving it but just by thinking that okay, it is simple, it is basic, okay, it won't be asked or anything sort of that, we don't know what will be asked. So everything we will cover and everything we have to revise also. We have started it around June and we have enough time. You have to revise it along with me only. That is why I'm telling you to revise it along with me, along with the class. Give test accordingly. Do not be lethargic in any sort of way. Hardly it will take half to 1 hour. 1 hour more. Give time while you are eating, or give time anywhere while you are traveling, while you are commuting. Have one extra hour you can devote from cutting out from either your daily routine or something out of that. You have to now take out some time or the other which you were giving it to other activities to study. So yeah, Sony, you will now come out with the points. How are we gonna learn this? Tomorrow I'll ask you. Okay? You'll make us all learn. Nature of business, overall plan, system of internal control, size of the organization, and information as regards organization of the business. ठीक है?
ठीक है सर.
Now drawing up the audit program. So you will draw the audit program, entire audit program. I hope everyone has seen. If not, let's just see the I just now what I told you, right? The framework of audit program. They will give you what? Revenue, expense, asset, liability. So revenue, the due date will be given. By what date it should complete, actual date, auditor, that means what? Reviewer, or you can say reviewer who has done the audit, then signature of that person, so that you make him accountable, responsible that you had done this work, and if at all any point comes out of audit next time, then I'll be asking you only, so you will be signing so that you are held responsible within the firm only, not as in the case of court or other where. Now drawing up the audit program, it says that when an auditor is appointed to audit the accounts of an entity for the first time, initial audit engagement, SA 510, initial audit engagement. Now the audit program should be developed therefore in 3 stages. Just remember that if they ask you, you have been appointed as an auditor for the first time, so how are you going to draw up the audit program? Then you will have to draw up the audit program in 3 stages. So for initial audits, we have to draw up the audit program in 3 stages. First is to come out with a broad outline of the audit program, how it should be drawn. Now you are not aware about the entity. No, you're not aware about the industry, business it operates, anything, right? You just know that audit has come out with, and we want to perform the audit for the first time for this entity. So you should first draw up a broad outline of the audit program which should be drawn. Broad outline means what all points are you gonna review in the audit? Asset, liability, income, expenditure, this, what, everything in the revenue. If at all it is more of cash based, then in the cash, what are you gonna review? So everything, a broad outline has to be come out with. And then after internal and accounting procedures have been reviewed, that means what? Again, I told you, everywhere, whenever they told you to plan, definitely you will come out with this point: internal control, internal controls, IC, internal control, accounting policies, accounting procedure. These 2 points you have to mention whenever you are planning or whenever you are framing an audit program, framing an audit plan. So after the internal and accounting procedures have been reviewed, the details should be filled up a consideration of the deficiency in the system of internal control. What all deficiencies are there? Deficiencies in the internal controls. So based on that, you will then again frame up your audit program. The in-depthness, the detail, the extent of the procedures that you need to perform, that will depend upon what? Depend upon the deficiencies in the internal controls. And lastly, thirdly, after the detailed checking procedure is over, so now then you will check audit performance, audit procedures will be performed. And after that, when the detailed checking is over, done, the extent to which the special procedure are required to be applied. So here, normal procedure apart except SA 510, you will also have to apply SA 510. For why? Because these are initial audit engagement, right? So initial audit engagement, we apply SA 510. The name itself is what? Initial audit engagement. And there we see whether the closing figures are correctly brought forward as opening. We see what closing and opening figures are matching or not, telling or not. We see whether the accounting policies which were earlier applied, whether we have applied the same accounting policies for the current year, or if at all there are changes in the accounting policies, accounting estimate, why is the reason, what is the reason, justification. So all these additional points are being considered in initial audit engagement. First time, initial audit means what? Either the auditee is auditing itself for the first time, or auditee has come out to you for the first time. That means we are auditing the entity for the first time, or the entity itself is getting audited for the first time. Those initial audit engagement we have to consider apart from the normal audit procedure, also about additional audit procedure that need to be performed in the case of initial audit engagements. So right, they have given you first time opening balance. You have to check with what? Opening balance matching with the or not with the closing balance. Independent verification of balances of debtors, creditors, physical inspection of fixed asset, personal inspection of various items of stock included in the closing inventory, testing their values. So again, if they ask you, you have been appointed for the first time as an auditor, how are you gonna draw up the audit program? So audit program will then be drawn up in three stages. Okay, three stages. The first one was a broad outline. Second, internal control policies and internal controls and accounting policies. Internal control and accounting policies, thereby determining the deficiencies in the internal control. And then after addressing the deficiencies, you would have performed all the audit procedures. Then after those procedures are over, you also have to go through initial audit engagement special considerations that you need to require for initial audit engagement. Example, opening balance, closing balance, telling, or such other inspections, inventory inspection, closing inventory, all these initial debtors, creditors. So these are my three stages. Now at each subsequent engagement, what do you mean by subsequent engagement? Next time, that is the recurring audit, same audit which you performed last year. Now same audit has arrived. That means initial audit in suppose 2021 2022, then recurring audit or the subsequent engagement in 2022 2023. The program should be reviewed again. Now you have to review the program because this was the program was based on the first time audit engagement, right? So you'll review now, and if necessary you can modify, because now you have experienced, right? You have experienced the first audit. You have now gained the experience what is the industry which the entity pertains to, model, a business model of the entity, inherent risk, control risk within the entity. So you have now gained the experience during the previous audit, and you know the important changes, and you will definitely, I told you what, every time evaluate the internal controls. All the time internal controls has to be evaluated. Now here they have given few circumstances where audit program would have to be suitably altered. So would have to be suitably altered. For example, if the audit procedure were designed for a certain volume of turnover, and subsequently we got to know that volume of turnover is increased substantially, therefore we might be required to change our audit procedures, and then accordingly determine the new audit program for increased audit procedures, right? Or decreased audit procedure, whatever be the case. So audit program might also have to be revised, might also have to be suitably altered. Similarly, if the volume of turnover is increased, what do you think will increase? If the volume of turnover is increased, what do you think will increase? Yes, volume of turnover, if it is increased, what do you think will increase? Sales or expenditure? Sales, right? Expenditure will also increase the variable cost, but definitely in relation to this, sales will increase. And if sales will increase, what will increase? Debtors or creditors? Debtors will increase, yes or no? So you can see the third point. Go through the third point, debtors. The amount of debtors you thought it would be, there is a change that requires suitable alteration in the audit program. Now also I told you what, suppose you thought that internal controls are effective. You perform test of controls. Do you remember this point we have already covered in SA 330? Last class only, that we performed test of controls, we found that they are operating effectively. However, when you started performing substantive audit procedures, you found that no, we found certain more audit evidence which shows that controls were not that much effective. That means we will have to revise now our materiality. We would have to revise our materiality. We would have to revise our audit strategy. We would have to revise our audit plan. We would have to revise our risk assessment procedure. We would have to revise our FAP and document accordingly. Do you remember this? So same point they are saying, that suppose internal controls you thought were operating effectively, but in actually they are not that much operative. They are not operating that much effectively with that much effectiveness. And because of this, you will tend to recall which point, fraud wala, misappropriation of asset, because of internal controls, right? Because since there is lacunae in internal controls, because of that misappropriation of assets will happen. So all the 4 points you can just try to link through this only. You'll tend to recall all the 4 points. This was asked in November 2022 for 4 marks straight away. You won't find it in RTP, MTP, nowhere. Straight away they asked in the exam. Getting it? So why every topic is important? It's not like only the topics which are tested in RTPs, in MTPs, in past exam, those are important. Whenever institute will want to, frame even an average paper, they will give you at least 60 to 70, 50 to 60% new questions. So November attempt was very easy in terms of questions that they asked from the standards on audit, and also in terms of other chapter questions, they all asked straight questions. That means the questions that they have already asked, which has already been asked in the exam, or RTP, MTP questions, or are pastly they have asked this. But in this attempt, May 23, they have come out with the new questions. They have framed new question. Although if you are gone through each and every topic, comfortable with all the topics, then you will be able to easily go through all the points. Like we did in professional ethics, right? We saw the question of professional ethics. We saw the questions of tax audit that was asked in this exam. Now comes audit execution. Audit execution. Come to audit execution. So here we have divided the execution phase into 4 stages. First is execution planning. How are you actually going to execute? Then risk and control evaluation. For this we prepare RECOM. I told you earlier also in L&T we used to prepare risk assessment control matrix. Risk assessment control matrix. I'll tell you about this in detail. Then we will test the controls which are mentioned in RECOM. We will test the controls, that is testing about the operating effectiveness of internal controls. Whether the controls which are mentioned in the RECOM file, whether all those controls, although implemented, are they but operating effectively or not? They should also operate effectively throughout the period of time, or as at a particular point of time. Testing has to be done, right? And then reporting. Ultimately you will report. Very easy, same plain sequential point. Execution, first you will plan, then you will prepare the RECOM, risk and control evaluation, risk evaluation, testing, and then reporting. Testing and then reporting. So example, if I want to give you, suppose the process will be given first. In the Excel file, they will give you the process. Suppose it is P2P, P2P, procure to pay. Sub process, they will give you material requisition note, purchase order, invoice, accounts payable. These are all what? Sub process. For all this process, for all this sub process, there will be mentioned what exactly happens in each and every particular process, what exactly has to happen. And for each and exactly every process, they will also mention the controls. That is, segregation of duty should be there. Access controls they'll mention. Similarly, they'll mention that if you are engaged in material requisition note, you will get the approval from this level of manager. You should get approval from manager which is more than the category A, if at all the material required is amounting to 50 lakhs or more. So category wise, amount wise, they can divide your approval level. They can divide your internal controls. So these are all what you will specify the controls. And just beside that, you will also specify what? Frequency of the control. Do you remember the frequency? This we have dealt with yesterday or day before yesterday regarding what? Nature, timing, and extent of controls. So in the extent of controls, we remember 4 points with our rep. Do you remember the rep? Extent of controls to be tested: frequency, length of time, rate of deviation, relevance and reliability. Right? Frequency, length of time, rate of deviation, relevance and reliability. So frequency, I told you what? Suppose frequency, like for tax audit, the frequency will be what? Once in a year. But suppose for TDS return, the controls with respect to TDS return, it will be what? Quarterly. Similarly, for frequency with respect to procure to pay, for MRN, the frequency could be as per the requisition as required. As per the requisition, frequency will be whenever the requisition is made, whenever the requirement, the request is raised. So based on the frequency, you will then realize the amount of sampling that you need to take, and that will also be mentioned in the RECOM. Sampling that you need to carry out. Based on the guidance note, I told you guidance note clearly specified the sampling. If the frequency is 4, I told you the sampling is required is 1. Similarly, if it is half yearly control, that means frequency will be twice 2. Again, one sample has to be out of 2. We will select 1. If it is annual control, we'll select 1. If it is monthly 12, then we'll select at least 3. If it is weekly 52, we'll select 5 to 6. So these are all what sampling, and then you will decide which all documents that you need to obtain for the purpose of testing of these internal controls. So in an essence, you are testing these internal controls. These are the controls, frequency, all the controls. You will then test whether they are operating or not, whether they are effectively operating or not. And then lastly, you will report whether the controls have passed or controls have pass or fail. You will have to report pass if there is any, if there isn't any deviation, that means whatever approval we required, we got the approval. Whatever excess controls, there should have been segregation of duties. Yes, there was SOD. Yes, there was all the controls that was implemented and were operating effectively. Then we will pass that control. But in case of any deviation, we will fail the control. Getting this, the stages of audit execution. This is also an RTP question, important. Stages of audit execution. So firstly, we'll plan the execution. Then we'll prepare risk and control evaluation, RECM, risk and assessment and control matrix. Matrix means what? A tabular matrix where everything is specified in a tabular format, right? And then testing, you will perform the testing of the controls, and lastly, reporting. Easy, sequential. So go through this till reporting, fast, quick. Just give it a reading once. And when I tell you to read, you should read with 100% concentration, with the thinking that okay, I should be able to recall at least half 50% of the points which have been mentioned with the plain reading once I have read. So yes, now come to this question, RTP May 2018, question number 3, page 131. Second question. All these 3 questions are test your knowledge questions straight away from the study material. It can come to exam as well. So first question, it is, they have also asked this in November 19. So see, RTP May 18, they gave the question in November 19. They asked the same question for 5 marks. So what's the question? It's about a movie theater complex. So have you all seen this movie, Drishyam 2? Drishyam 2 dekhe ho? Yeah. So he has opened this cinema theater of his own in the second part. So suppose you are being appointed as an auditor of, what was his name? Ajay Devgan. 10वीं पास क्या बोलती थी वो? What was the name? So suppose you were the auditor of this cinema theater. Along with the sale of tickets over the counter and online booking, the major proportion of income is from the cafe shops, pubs, etc. located in the complex. Its other income includes advertisement also, hoarding, banners, slides, short films, etc. So facility for parking is also provided. Loud appointed your film as the auditor of the entity. Being the head of the audit team, you are therefore required to draw an audit program initially in respect of its revenue and expenditure, considering the above mentioned facts along with rather relevant points related to complex. So in a movie theater, I will ask you only what all points you will think that you might want to address or you might want to check. So apart from movie, yes, definitely in a theater we have also some other stream of incomes, right? Income from cafe, pubs, or advertisement income.
Parking income,
Similarly,
sir.
what income? Parking income,
Park.
right? So you will all check all this. What they have mentioned in the question, definitely you will check those points also. But except all these points, can you come out with 1 or 2 more points? Think.
Sir, tickets are properly, properly numbered and in serial number or not?
Correct, correct. From IPCC, you must have remembered cinema
Yes,
hall
sir.
audits, right? So there used to mention what internal control system should be in line. Internal control system. Then in that they would mention that ticket number should be serially numbered. Physical ticket checking should happen. If at all it is online booking, then you should also check during the while entering or while visiting the cinema hall. You should then check the audit. It should not happen that you have taken the ticket of normal sitting and you are sitting at the recliner, right? So those also has to be checked, that whether the total capacity, the hall capacity and the occupancy, then you should check whether the same occupancy is in actual in there or not, occupancy of the hall. So everything has to be checked according, based on the internal controls, based on that angle where there could be a sort of deviation from the internal controls. So internal controls, tickets should be serially numbered, tickets should be checked properly physically. In case of online booking, what is the process to collect? And then also, once you have collected the cash for tickets, physical tickets, once you collect the cash in the physical counter, then what is the process of the depositing those cash in the bank? Whether is it deposited on the same day or is it deposited weekly? So ideally it should be deposited on the same day. Ideally, right? So everything you will have to then assess. Clear? Now this all relates to income source. What all points you can think from expense point of view of cinema hall? What do you think? What will you check based on the expense point of view in the
So
cinema hall?
salary of employees.
Salaries to employee, yeah. Specific to cinema, these salaries, electricity payment, yeah, all the entities we will check. Specific to cinema hall.
So advertisement expenses.
Advertisement expense, you can get distributor, important. Just what Pooja told, you won't be getting the rights to screen the movie, right? The screening rights that you get, you will have to make the payments for those screens. So either are we making the screen payments lump sum, or we making the payment are we making the payment based on the crowd that we are getting a percentage, suppose 40% of the total crowd that will be seeing the movie. So 40% of the audience that you are having, that fees are you paying to the screener, or are you paying to the distributor entire in lump sum? To distributor rights that you have received, rights, advertisement payment for the purpose of advertising. Similarly, you might have taken the premises on lease. So lease payments, these all expenditures you will have to go through, right? So just you can just go through these points later after the class only. After the class only, just go through this point. Next, come on to next question and tell me what do you find and something odd about this question. In this question, it's a manufacturing company providing the details of wastages of raw materials in a percentage for various months. You have been asked to inquire into the causes of abnormal wastage of raw material and then draw out an accordingly an audit plan. Wastage percentage they are given of July, August, September, October. July, August, September, October. Yeah. What do you think is the abnormal wastage in and around? What do you think is abnormal wastage that they are trying to refer to? If you can compute the figure, approximately what do you think is the abnormal wastage? No, not the month, but figure I am talking about. Yeah, definitely in the month of October you can see a surge in the wastage. But abnormal wastage, it would be around 8.1 minus average, right? 8.1 minus normal. Normally it is around 2.3 or 2.4. Average will be 2.4 around. No, 2.6, right? So 5.5% you can see is your abnormal wastage in the month of October. In the month of October, you can see abnormal wastage of 5.5%. So now why do you think this abnormal wastage could have happened? It's a manufacturing concern. Yeah, come out with your own points. If it directly matches with the answer, then you can anyway will never forget those points. Try to think. Yes. For abnormal wastage, what do you think you will check? Yeah, Sashi, tell me any single point. Why do you think there would have been abnormal wastage?
So material defect could have been increased.
Material difference.
Defects.
Yeah, right, correct. So raw material, there could be a more defect in the raw material. So whatever inputs you are feeding, those only are not proper, then definitely the output would be wrong, the processing would be wrong, right? So output there, that's why maybe could be leading to more abnormal wastage. Similarly, if the inputs are wrong, it could also happen that inputs are right but the processing machine is wrong. So machine could have gone outdated, raw material inspection is not done, right? Correct, Kapil. Similarly, the machine inspection is not done. Do you remember, have you all done SCMP subject? SCMP. So do you remember there are used to have 4 types of maintenance: automatic maintenance, preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance. So if the machine is, yeah, TPM is not applied, so machine is not maintained, machine is outdated, machine is not proper performing well, then definitely the processing will not be proper, and therefore the output, the abnormal, the wastage percentage will be more. Yeah, more points apart from this. Hmm? Think. This you dealt with what? Raw material. Now you can also come to labor. Laborers are not well trained, or laborers are not properly trained, you can say, or laborers are ineffective, inefficient. So see, the cost is made up of what? Raw material, labor, and other prime cost, other variable cost. Factory overheads, right? So raw material we addressed, labor now we address just now that laborers are not well trained or laborers are inefficient. Similarly, other factory cost, plant and machinery is outdated. Must more points. If there is any electricity run out, so suppose in a area where it's a village area and the factory can't bear the electricity loss. That means once the furnace is stopped because of electricity loss, then it will again have to heat up again, right? Yeah, downtime also, machine downtime, it's already in downtime. In repairing is not done, impairment is not done. Similarly, electricity is down, then that machine will be stopped, and therefore the furnace that you might be aware about. So suppose example, the steel industry in iron and steel, the furnace is very hot, so it cannot be stopped, because if you stop the furnace will again then solidifies, and then again you will have to melt it, and again it will have to heat up. So for that, the factory will require again more resources, much more resources than required. So it will never stop, factory doesn't stop anytime. So in that case, if there is an electricity loss or run out of the electricity, then that could also impact your abnormal wastage, right? So that is all they have given these points. Standard consumption figure, there should be a breakup of normal wastage. So in the normal wastage, you should be aware about how much is the wastage because of moist means moist के कारण कितना wastage हो गया है. That means suppose in a food grains there is wastage because of moist, because of oil. So there could be a lot many reasons for normal wastages. Similarly, storage, because of storage, proper storage is not being happening, processing is not done correctly, handling is improper, there is lack in CCTV camera physical internal controls is not mentioned properly or not operating effectively. Preventive maintenance program, see fourth point, preventive maintenance program, what I was telling you about SCMP, preventive maintenance is not being happening. So generally preventive maintenance is as opposed against the corrective maintenance. So corrective maintenance happens after the machine breakdown, but before the machine breakdown there should happen what? Preventive maintenance, regular checks on the machinery. Similarly, quality control techniques are not there, inventory plans and procedures, because of deterioration or pilferage. Yeah, definitely a great point. Pilferage, chindi chori. Calculating wastage for September is the same as was adopted for the other 3 months. So basis on which you have actually calculated the wastage, it should be same. So basis on which you have calculated the wastage for October, it should be same as what you have calculated for past 3 months. Yeah, Garima. And then you obtain a statement of showing breakup, laboratory report and inspection report. You will get the breakup of wastage. Is it due to moist? Is it due to water? Is it due to oil? Or is it due to insects? Or what all breakup? You'll get the breakup of the entire wastage. So suppose in the iron and steel industry there is generally a breakup of wastage which is generally like 1 to 2% is into refractories, because of refractories. And similarly 1 to 2% you will find slurry or other byproducts. So these are the wastages. So you are aware about how much percentage of wastage should happen if I am feeding 100 tons of input, how much wastage should happen. And if at all the wastage is exceeding the normal wastage, then those are what abnormal wastage, and that has to be checked upon. Accidental theft or fire losses. Examine whether any new production line was taken up during the month in respect of which standard input output ratio is not mentioned. So 100, if you are inputting 100 ton and the output should generally be 98 tons, so that means what 2% input is normal wastage. But suppose if there are at all you are now into certain new production line. So earlier you were doing suppose iron and steel, and now you are also into aluminium. So now you will be having raw material like bauxite or other sort of metals. So this is a new production line for you. There you don't know how much will be the input output ratio, standard input output ratio. So then you have to assess accordingly. You can't just compare with the previous production line input output ratio. So go through these points. If they ask you for 5 marks, you should try to give or reciprocate almost of the points. It is not that hard. It is just you have to go through these points. And this one is your homework, because this answer you have done it. Can you tell me this point? See, control surrounding journal entries. I gave you one example: closing entry or adjustment entry, control surrounding the journal entry. Have you given this? Have I given you this example with respect to park and post control? Park and post control. Do you know park and post control? About park and post control. So suppose if I am the accountant and you are the chief accountant, I'll be doing all the entries, accounting entry, journal entry. But they will be giving me certain limit that I can post up to 1 lakh. If it is more than 1 lakh, if it is more than 1 lakh of journal entry, then I can simply park the entry. The entry will be parked means will be stopped and will not be posted until approval of the higher accountant authority. Until the approval of higher authority. So it will be parked and it will be posted once the approval is received. So there is park and post control with respect to journal entry. Similarly, do you remember the example which I gave for fourth point? Do you remember the example which I gave for fourth point? Yeah. Yes or no? Hmm? What was the example I gave for this fourth point? Information system captures the events and condition other than transaction. It should not be a transaction, but an events and condition. It is been captured by the information system and those are significant to the financial statement. Do you remember or not? Depreciation, correct, Nikita? So these all points we have covered: class of transaction, procedure, both IT or manual system, and related accounting records. So what's the question? What's the question? Go through the question, and then also go through essay 315 where this specific answer was also mentioned there. Just try to write in both the process. If they ask this, then also this is the answer, and if they ask that, then that is also the same answer. There the question was what are the procedures and records that has to be maintained for information system. Information system being one of the component of internal control, what is the procedure or record that has to be maintained for us to check whether the information system is properly carrying out properly or not. Same again, we will go through the same question, but there the question line will be different when chapter 3. There, instead of procedures and record, they will ask about methods, and there will be a slight difference in the answer. So just go through essay 315 also. Mention about this question, that is with respect to ऑनलाइन शॉपिंग वाला क्वेश्चन जो है, ठीक है. फॉर्मुलेटिंग ऑडिट स्ट्रेटेजी फॉर ऑनलाइन क्वेश्चन, ऑनलाइन शॉपिंग. Formulating an audit strategy of the company involved in online shopping during last 5 years. Same answer, and also right here also essay 315, which part, which page number, which question, which topic, everything should be written. So how's your revision going for essay 200, 300 and SQC 1? Yes, Nikita, tell me quickly, how can you commit fraudulent financial reporting? Different ways to commit fraudulent financial reporting. Fast. Different ways to commit fraudulent financial reporting in accordance with essay 240. बोलो भाई. हाँ.
I don't remember.
Try. Do you remember accounting entries passed to the close to the end of accounting period? Close to the end of accounting period में आप जनरल एंट्रीज पास कर रहे हो, फिक्टिशियस जनरल एंट्री पास कर रहे हो. डू यू रिमेंबर दिस पॉइंट? सीईओ ने फैक्ट्स कंसील किए, रिकॉर्ड्स अल्टर किए एंड इससे कॉम्प्लेक्स ट्रांजेक्शन बनाया. करेक्ट. धनलक्ष्मी एंड पूजा. So C से close to the end of accounting period. From E it was what? E for estimate account balance, right? So you are manipulating the estimate account balance. O for omitting the entry or advancing the entry or postponing the entry, right? Postponing the transaction, advancing the transaction. It is the sale pertains to next year, but you have brought the sale to this year only. Why? Because you wanted bank loan. So bank will ask for more sales, more turnover, and therefore you fictitiously created sales in this year, which you will set off against the sales in next year. So these are all what fraudulent financial reporting. CEO ने facts conceal किए. So for concealment of important, significant material facts, alteration of the records, and complexity of the transaction. Clear? So what do you think, Dhanlakshmi? Is it appropriate for you to inquire with the management with respect to fraud? Is it appropriate with respect to with respect to you to inquire with the management with respect to fraud? Yes.